Fourth earthquake since December 7th strikes Cleveland, Ohio at the Midcontinental Rift, which has a mantle plume. Magnitude 3.1, 2.6, 1.7, and we had a 2.0 just today. Now, we've been thinking about what's going on the West Coast, what's going on perhaps on the East Coast, and New Madrid seismic zone. But we don't know too much about the Midcontinental Rift. This is that horseshoe-shaped, cream color shape that you see hanging around the Great Lakes. That is the Midcontinental Rift, MCR for short. The black line is the Real Rift, the New Madrid seismic zone, and these are the red spots of the earthquakes in that area. Kansas is involved as well. This is the Canadian quakes that we have, West Coast, East Coast, and over the Great Lakes, as you can see. I think we should take a look at them together. Keweenaw hotspot, geophysical evidence, mantle plume beneath the Midcontinental Rift system. We're going to read this because it's very important for us to know what's going on there. This is it right here. This is today's quake, 2.0 at 5 kilometers depth. 5 people reported feeling it. It's basically, as you can see here, right there, right on the banks of Lake Erie, Cleveland. That is the exact same position that we've had the other 3 earthquakes, the 3.1, the 2.6, 1.7, and the 2.0 today. And it's an astonishing sign of an earthquake swarm right in that area. That's the definition of the swarm, happening even in a few days, even in a few years, but in the same location. In this event, it's right in the same exact location. Right there. The Keweenaw fault. The Keweenaw fault. The fault is the boundary between the Midcontinental Rift system, that is a 1,200-mile long geological rift in the center of the North American continent and south-central part of the North American plate. I think most of us did not realize it was there. It formed with the continent's core. North American craton began to split apart. So in effect, what you have is 3 things splitting up. That is, the continent is splitting into 3 pieces. It's splitting on the east side, which is sloughing off towards the southeast by this New Madrid seismic zone Real Rift, which it should be called the New Madrid Rift Valley, actually, extending from the Mississippi going up and also swiping Lake Erie. This is where we are having our quakes. Repeatedly, right there. That's Pennsylvania. And it goes up to past Lake Ontario and all the way up to the St. Lawrence Seaway. That's already cracked there. And we're having a number of quakes here. What is that? And all this, of course, we're having activity here, there as well. And this Keweenaw fault of the Midcontinental Rift is giving us the quakes that we're getting in Kansas as well. Sorry, wait a minute. Let me back out. Okay. Oop. All right. We have the earthquakes that we had and the blasts that we had recently. The booming sounds in Kansas have to be associated with earthquakes, I would say. I'm not a geologist, but we did read yesterday when we talked about the quakes over Cleveland the hotspot, that the Kansas quakes are caused by the rift. It goes off this way. This way. So we have the New Madrid seismic zone cutting this way. It looks like the quakes that we're having in Ohio have to do with that. Let's go back to our map. Right here, okay? This is Lake Erie right there. That's New Madrid seismic zone. And there's Kansas, Oklahoma, Kansas. This just went up the past hour, 2.9 in Nebraska. That should have been felt. Nobody reported it. Perhaps it's an area that's farmland or something. Okay, 2.9. This is actually the Mid-Atlantic Rift. Nebraska, Kansas. Okay, so that is another part of a split right there, which would have the second part of the continent splitting from the third part right there. So this is one rift right there. And actually, the superior section was very close to Wyoming. It's not that far, if you can see in geological terms. 2 billion years ago, they were much closer, and they started rifting apart. Superior to Wyoming, and they started rifting apart. Okay, that's a very important thing to know, to keep in mind. This could be from the Midcontinental Rift. And this is the area where we've had our swarms. Let's go in a lot closer that we can see. That's it right there. Now you can see what's happening. It's in the exact same position, right there, off Mentor, right there. Mentor on the lake, Lake Erie, right there. Mentor on the lake is where we had our quake swarm. And the Canadians also have the plot of they keep the earthquakes a lot longer than Seismo Berkeley, which only keeps them a week. So we go to the Canadian map, and we see that this was a 3.1 on December 7th, 2 kilometer depth, right there, okay, on Lake Erie, Cleveland, Ohio, all right? As you can see, we have a tremendous amount of quakes along the St. Lawrence Seaway, also on the west coast. Some of these were the big ones that we had, the ones that we had yesterday I have to find. Okay, this one was yesterday, 3.9 and 3.5. These were yesterday's quakes, so they're not small, and they're above the Cascadia area. Okay, this was on the November 15th. They keep them on there for a longer time. So, and this was a 3.1 over Cleveland on December 7th. So that was our fourth quake, 4 quakes since December 7. In 5 days, we've had 4 quakes. The Kowina hotspot, okay? The mantle plume beneath the Midcontinental Rift by USGS. The Proterozoic Midcontinental Rift system of North America. This is it right here, the map of it. As you can see, Nebraska, Kansas, all right? And Midcontinental Rift system in North America, remarkably similar to Phanerozoic rifting continental margins and flood basalt provinces. Like the younger analogs, the volcanism within this older rift, can be explained by decompressing, melting, and rapid extrusion of igneous material during lithospheric extension above a broad asthenospheric thermal anomaly, which we call the Kowina hotspot. Great Lakes International Multidisciplinary Program, or on crustal evolution, seismic reflection profiles, constraint end member models of melt thickness and stretching factors, which yield an inferred mantle potential temperature 1,500 degrees to 1,570 degrees Celsius during rifting. Combined gravity modeling and subsidence calculations are consistent with stretching factors that reached 3 or 4 before rifting ceased, and much of the lower crust beneath the rift consists of relatively high density, intruded or underplating, syn-rifting igneous material. The isotropic signature of Koweïnan volcanic rocks, presented in the companion paper by Nicholson and Shirley, is consistent with our model of passive rifting above an asthenospheric mantle plume. They're rifting over the mantle plume is causing them to rift. So it's like you're having a kettle boiling and the bubbles of the water are coming up and it's causing the sides to split. So going back to our earthquake, here, they don't mention anything having to do with mantle plume and hotspots here. They do not mention the Midcontinental Rift, but as we know, that's where it takes place. The fault is the boundary between the Midcontinental Rift system and the adjacent Precambrian terrain. The peninsula itself, the southeastern side of the large syncline beneath Lake Superior, as you can see here. The northwestern side forms Ile Royale. Ile Royale is an island of the Great Lakes located in the northwest of Lake Superior. In Laurentia, is part of the U.S. state of Michigan. The island and the 450 surrounding smaller islands and waters make up Ile Royale National Park. Okay, the fault is more than 100 miles long and traces a northwesterly path. The fault is most likely younger than the Jacobson Formation and the Devonian period. Seismic events in 1906 claimed to be an earthquake has been attributed to a rock burst in the area has been significantly mined. Okay, so the Midcontinental Rift system, this is it. This is the area between Superior and Wyoming that we were talking about, right there. Okay, this here is the Koweïnan Rift. Let's go in a little bit more. Okay, not much more. That's it. The Koweïnan Rift is right there. That's the mantle plume right there. And you can see that's the splitting here. The Superior and Wyoming were splitting. This was Archean. And the, okay, this was splitting here. That's a rift. And this is the Midcontinental Rift that we're talking about. Oops, sorry. The Midcontinental Rift, or Koweïnan Rift, is the 1,200-mile long geological rift, center of North America continent, south central part North American plate. It formed with the continent's core, the North American craton, began to split apart during the Mesoproterozoic era of the Precambrian about 1.1 billion years ago. I'm sorry, I said 2, it's 1.1. The rifting failed, leaving behind thick layers of igneous rock that are exposed in its northern reaches, but buried beneath later sedimentary formations along most of its western and eastern arms. Those arms meet at Lake Superior. Lake Superior. That's it, the dark blue, right under my hand. Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. The rifting failed. Lake Superior, which is contained within the Rift Valley, you can see the split right there. The lake's north shore in Ontario and Minnesota defines the northern arc of the rift from the lake. The rift's eastern arm tends south to the central lower Michigan, possibly to Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Alabama. The western arm runs from Lake Superior southwest through portions of Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska to northeastern Kansas, and possibly Oklahoma. Formation and failure. The rock formations created by the rift include gabbro and granite intrusive rocks and basalt lavas. In the Lake Superior region, the upwelling of the molten rock may have been the result of a hotspot which produced a triple junction. The hotspot domed the rocks of the Lake Superior area. Voluminous basaltic lava flows erupted from the central axis of the rift, similar to the present-day rifting under Afar Depression in East Africa Rift. That's the Great Rift Valley that we know of. The southwest-southeast extension represent two arms of the triple junction, while the third failed arm extends north into Ontario. And the rift system may have been the result of extensional forces behind the continental collision of the Greenville orogeny. Look at that. Wow. It's just across the whole of the United States. You can see that. Long-lived Mesoproterozoic mountain building event associated with assembly of supercontinent Rodinia. Look at that. To the east, which is perhaps parts overlapping the timing of the rift development, later compressive forces from the Grenville orogeny played a major role in the rift's failure and closure. Had the rifting process continued, the eventual result would have been sundered of the North American craton and creation of a sea. So if it had continued, look, that's a rift. Lake Superior is a rift. Where is it? That would have split like this, right? Just like this thing is splitting here. If we go to Africa, you've got a lake there as well. Where is it? Let's tip it properly. Okay, find the Rift Valley. There it is. Okay, Lake Victoria. You've got lakes here in the Rift Valley as well. Look at that. At one point, they're going to open up. And they have, that's with 5.5, I had marked that. It's amazing that that sticker didn't come off. Most of my stickers come off. Most of my pins come off. Okay, so you can see the Rift Valley here is filled with lakes because it's splitting. At one point, this is going to split off, and just like Madagascar came off, and that's going to create another part, another huge island, and allow this to become part of the sea. Okay, this thing here, unless it splits this way up here. The river, I think the Nile starts from here as well. This is the beginning of the Nile. If it splits off, you could say goodbye to the Nile River. So that's it. We have big lakes here as well, as you can see. That's part of the splitting. And volcanoes as well. Earthquakes and volcanoes. Let's go back to Lake Superior now. Okay, bring it to our north. Okay, so you can see Lake Superior the rift did not continue. It would have gone down this way and through Kansas, gone this way. And we do have volcanoes in Kansas on this side here. We made previous videos on this, and those are explosive volcanoes. They're diamond volcanoes. They spit out diamonds, gems, and semi-precious stones. And it could be that the people there are hearing the loud booms and feeling shaking of their houses because of the perhaps gas emissions. And some of those gas bubbles are quite huge. They could be miles long, and they have to come out. And that's what could be causing the explosive booms. Now, as far as the shaking, what can I tell you? I hope that if they are quakes, that they are properly reported. Now, this is obviously part of the Midcontinental Rift. One part is this, sloughing off, New Madrid seismic rift. Second part is the Midcontinental Rift, I keep making that mistake, I'm sorry. And that would have been part 1, part 2, part 3 of the continent splitting into 3 parts. So that's where we're getting our quakes. Okay, so the rifting here of Lake Superior, if it had continued, it would have obviously, as we know, as you can see, caused the crack in the continental United States. Okay, similar rocks, natural resources, yes, they do have. They even think that they may have crude oil there. Michigan copper, native copper deposits. Okay, so Northwest, I think we went through this, didn't we? No, we didn't. Lake Royale, Keweenaw Peninsula of Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and North Shore Lake Superior. Similar rocks are exposed as far south as St. Paul, Minnesota. Elsewhere, the rift is buried. More recent sediment rocks up to 6 miles thick were buried. The rift has been mapped by gravity anomalies. It's dense basaltic rock increasing gravity locally. A slightly older but possibly related geographic feature, the Mackenzie Large Igneous Province in Canada, which extends from the Arctic in Nunavut to the Great Lakes in northern Ontario. There you go. That's around northwest of Hudson Bay, as we can see. Okay, so that's the story with the earthquakes there. It seems like the Erie quakes, Lake Erie, Cleveland, Ohio, are related to the New Madrid seismic zone. Right here, New Madrid seismic zone. These are today's quakes. And we had another one here, of course, there. The reason I call this Midcontinental Rift is because I wanted to impress on you that that is also having quakes, because the other a couple of days ago, here, we had this one here. Okay, that's the one that one of my viewers said that was in the United States, near where she lives, whereas Canada has it marked on Ontario. Okay, that was a 2 magnitude quake, and they also had this one here, which was smaller. This was a 1.7 magnitude quake. Those are definitely on the Midcontinental Rift, because they're just right next to Lake Superior, right here. Okay, so the Lake Erie, of course, is New Madrid seismic zone, and so is this, of course. And this is just now came in, Oklahoma 2.1. Okay, these are the blue are today's quakes, Nebraska. And we did have a deep quake here, that one there. That's Juan de Fuca, Cascadia. It's very deep, it's 42 kilometers deep. Whereas the area here is very thin, because it's stretched out. That's pretty deep. All right, so I'll leave links below for you for this concerning the Midcontinental Rift. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.